Hi everyone, my name is Dia and I am here to read with you all Out of My Mind by Sharon M. Draper for our older kids pre-recording session on July 4th, 2020. I hope you guys are doing well and I'm excited to read with you. All right, let's get started. I'm surrounded by thousands of words, maybe millions. Cathedral, mayonnaise, pomegranate, Mississippi, Neapolitan, hippopotamus, silky, terrifying, iridescent, tickle, sneeze, wish, worry. Words have always swirled around me like snowflakes, each one delicate and different, each one melting untouched in my hands. Deep within me, words pile up in huge drifts, mountains of phrases and sentences and connected ideas, clever expressions, jokes, love songs. From the time I was really little, maybe just a few months old, words were like sweet liquid gifts, and I drank them like lemonade. I could almost taste them. They made my jumbled thoughts and feelings have substance. My parents have always blanketed me with conversation. They chattered and babbled. They verbalized and vocalized. My father sang to me. My mother whispered her strength into my ear. Every word my parents spoke to me or about me, I absorbed and kept and remembered. All of them. I have no idea how I entangled the complicated process of words and thought, but it happened quickly and naturally. By the time I was 2, all my memories had words, and all my words had meanings, but only in my head. I've never spoken one single word. I'm almost 11 years old. All right, so every couple of sentences, every couple of paragraphs or so, I'm just going to ask you to pause after I ask a question just to think about. And you guys are just going to answer and, think about it in your head, talk to an adult, someone near you, a friend, anything like that. And so I guess at the end of this first page, what I would ask you is, who is this girl? Like, what perspective are we learning about this girl from? Because obviously she's not speaking it, as we just learned, because she's never spoken a single word, or she's mute. She's unable to speak. But, what perspective are we learning about her from? Are we learning about it from someone else, like talking about her? Are we learning it from her perspective in her mind? She's thinking it? Are we learning about, if she's signing it with her hands? Like, just take a second and think about that. So just pause the video and then press play again when you're finished with your answer and have already thought about it. All right, go ahead and pause. All right, hopefully you're back. Let's continue. I can't talk. I can't walk. I can't feed myself or take myself to the bathroom. Big bummer. My arms and hands are pretty stiff, but I can mash the buttons on the TV remote and move my wheelchair with the help of knobs that I can grab on the wheels. I can't hold a spoon or a pencil without dropping it, and my balance is like zip. Humpty Dumpty had more control than I do. When people look at me, I guess they see a girl with short, dark, curly hair, strapped into a pink wheelchair. By the way, there's nothing cute about a pink wheelchair. Pink doesn't change a thing. They'd see a girl with dark brown eyes that are full of curiosity, but one of them is slightly out of whack. Her head wobbles a little. Sometimes she drools. She's really tiny for a girl who's aged 10 3/4. Her legs are very thin, probably because they've never been used. Her body tends to move on its own agenda, with feet sometimes kicking out unexpectedly and arms occasionally flailing, connecting with whatever's close by, a stack of CDs, a bowl of soup, a vase of roses. Not a whole lot of control there. So now just think about what you can do in your everyday life that you take for granted that this little girl can't. So if you think about it, she can't walk and she can't talk. She can't feed herself. She can't take herself to the bathroom. She can't turn on the TV. She can't hold a pencil or feed herself. Things like that. Like, what are some things that you do in your everyday life that this little girl might not be able to? And then I also want you to think about your similarities. You might be the same age. You might think the same things as, like, with your family, about your family and things like that. You might have similar things in your home, like a stack of CDs or a bowl of soup or a vase of roses. So I just want you to take a second and think about your similarities and your differences with this little girl. All right, go ahead and pause. All right, hopefully you're back. Let's continue. After folks got finished making a list of my problems, they might take time to notice that I have a fairly nice smile and deep dimples. I think my dimples are cool. I wear tiny gold earrings. Sometimes people never even ask my name, like it's not important or something. It is. My name is Melody. I can remember way back to when I was really, really young. Of course, it's hard to separate real memories from the videos of me that Dad took on his camcorder. I've watched those a million times. Mom bringing me home from the hospital, her face showing smiles but her eyes squinted with worry. Melody tucked into a tiny baby bathtub. My arms and legs looked so skinny, I didn't splash or kick. Melody propped with blankets on the living room sofa, a look of contentment on my face. I've never cried so much when I was a baby. Mom swears it's true. Mom massaging me with lotion after a bath. I can still smell the lavender, then wrapping me in a fluffy towel with a little hood built in one corner. Dad took videos of me getting fed, getting changed, and even me sleeping. As I got older, I guess he was waiting for me to turn over and sit up and walk. I never did. So now let's just take a second to think about what are some of your memories as a young kid, something maybe that you've watched on screen that your parents have showed you, a certain instance that you remember from when you were little, something like this, like memories. Just like Melody here also has memories that she thinks about just as her parents like talk to her about. So just take a second to pause. All right, and hopefully you're back. Let's keep going. But I did absorb everything. I began to recognize noises and smells and tastes. The whoop and whoosh of the furnace coming alive each morning. The tangy odor of the heated dust as the house warmed up. The feel of a sneeze in the back of my throat. And music. Songs floated through me and stayed. Lullabies mixed with the soft smells of bedtime slept with me. Harmonies made me smile. It's like I've always had a painted musical soundtrack playing in the background of my life. I can almost hear colors and smell images when music is played. Mom loves classical. Big, booming Beethoven symphonies blast from her CD player all day long. Those pieces always seem to be bright blue as I listen, and they smell like fresh paint. Dad is partial to jazz, and every chance he gets, he winks at me and takes out Mom's Mozart disc and then pops a CD of Miles Davis or Woody Herman. Jazz to me sounds brown and tan, and it smells like wet dirt. Jazz music drives Mom crazy, which is probably just why Dad puts it on. Jazz makes me itch, she says with a frown on Dad's music as Dad's music explodes in the kitchen. Dad goes to her, gently scratches her arms and back, then engulfs her in a hug. She stops frowning, but she changes it back to classical again as soon as Dad leaves the room. For some reason, I've always loved country music. Loud, guitar strumming, broken heart music. Country is lemons, not sour, but sugar sweet and tangy. Lemon cake icing, cool, fresh lemonade. Lemon, lemon, lemon. Love it. When I was really little, I remember sitting in our kitchen, being fed breakfast by Mom, and a song came on the radio that made me screech with joy. All right, so now I just want you to think about what the soundtrack to your life is. Just how Melody said the soundtrack to her mom's life is classical, and the soundtrack to her dad's life is jazz, and the soundtrack to her life is country. What's your soundtrack to your life? What music do you listen to? Do you listen to hip-hop? Do you listen to pop? Do you listen to country or jazz or classical? Whatever it is, just take a second to think about it. All right, hopefully you're back after you paused. And now for this next part, this little passage of the song, these next 6 lines, I want you to sing it out loud. Sing it how you feel like it would be sung if it was the soundtrack to your life, or, how you think it should be sung, because I'm sure a lot of you haven't heard this song. Maybe some of you have. I personally haven't heard this song before reading this book. So sing it in your head out loud to a family member, to a pet, to a friend, and just sing these next 6 lines, and then we'll move on. All right, so pause right here, and then we'll continue in just a second. All right, I hope you're back after hearing this song. I will just gonna read it out for you. I'm not gonna sing it, just so that you guys get an understanding of the words. So I'm singing. Elvira, Elvira, my heart's on fire, Elvira. Giddy up, papa, mau, mau. Giddy up, papa, mau, mau. Hi-ho, Silver, away. How did I already know the words and the rhythms to that song? I have no idea. It must have seeped into my memory somehow, maybe from a radio or TV program. Anyway, I almost fell out of my chair. I scrunched up my face and jerked and twitched as I tried to point to the radio. I wanted to hear the song again, but Mom just looked at me like I was nuts. How could she understand that I loved the song Elvira by the Oak Ridge Boys when I barely understood it myself? I had no way to explain how I could smell freshly sliced lemons and see citrus-toned musical notes in my mind as it played. If I had paintbrush, wow, what a painting that would be. But Mom just shook her head and kept on spooning applesauce into my mouth. There's just so much that my mother doesn't know. So now let's just pause and think about the soundtrack that you previously mentioned, the soundtrack to your life. What color does that soundtrack embody to you? Remember how Melody said, I believe jazz sounded like brown and tan and dirt. So how does your soundtrack to your life, what color does it make you think of? What smell, what taste, what touch, what senses are engaged when you think about the soundtrack of your life? So just pause and think about that for a second. All right, and hopefully you're back. Let's keep going. I suppose it's a good thing to be unable to forget anything, being able to keep every instant of my life crammed inside my head. But it's also very frustrating. I can't share any of it, and none of it ever goes away. I remember stupid stuff, like the feeling of a lump of oatmeal stuck on the roof of my mouth, or the taste of toothpaste not rinsed off my teeth. The smell of early morning coffee is a permanent memory, mixed up with the smell of bacon and the background yakking of the morning news people. And mostly, though, I remember words. Very early, I figured out that there were millions of words in the world. Everyone around me was able to bring them out with no effort. The salespeople on television, buy one and get two free for a limited time only. The mailman who came to the door. Morning, Mrs. Brooks, how's the baby? The choir at church. Hallelujah, hallelujah, amen. The checkout clerk at the grocery store. Thanks for shopping with us today. Everyone uses the words to express themselves, except me. And I bet most people don't realize the power of words, but I do. Thoughts need words. Words need a voice. I love the smell of my mother's hair after she washes it. I love the feel of the scratchy stubble on my father's face before he shaves, but I'll never be able to tell them. So now just pause for a second and think about another thing that you take for granted, whether that be telling your friend they look pretty before they're about to go out, whether that be, telling someone that you like their outfit, or asking for something, asking for a glass of water, things that Melody can't do. So just pause for a second and think about 3 things in your daily life that you use voice for that you don't really think about, that you kind of take for granted. And then we'll continue right after you pause it. All right, hopefully you're back. Let's keep going. I guess I figured out I was different a little at a time. Since I never had trouble thinking or remembering, it actually sort of surprised me that I couldn't do stuff. And it made me angry. My father brought me home a small stuffed cat for me when I was really little. less than a year old, I'm sure. It was white and soft and just the right size for chubby baby fingers to pick up. I was sitting on one of those baby carriers on the floor, strapped in safe as I checked out my world of green shag carpet and matching sofa. Mom placed the toy cat in my hands, and I smiled. Excuse me. Here, Melody, Daddy brought you a play pretty, she cooed in that high-pitched voice that adults use with children. Now, what's a play pretty? As if it's not hard enough figuring out real stuff, I have to figure out the meanings of made-up words. So now just think about what's a made-up word that you use in your everyday life, something that's not in the English dictionary, something that professionals don't use, just something that's like slang in a sense. There's a lot of slang right now, a lot of different vernacular that's different from many years ago that your grandparents and parents might have a hard time interpreting. So I just want you to take a second and think about like a word that you've invented that you use in your daily life, or a word that's like very common, that you understand the meaning of that others might not. For me, it would be something like, for my dog, it would be, do you want a treaty weedy, or something like that. You know, like a made up little word that you say in a high pitched voice, maybe to a baby, to a dog, or even if it's just with your friends, like some sort of slang. So just pause and think of maybe 3 things that you do in your everyday life, or say in your everyday life, that others might not understand, who aren't able to ask the meaning of something like melody. All right. And now that you're back, let's keep going. But I loved the soft coolness of the little cat's fur. And then it fell on the floor. Dad placed it in my hands the second time. I really wanted to hold it and hug it, but it fell on the floor once more. I remember I got mad and started to cry. Try again, sweetie, Dad said, sadness decorating the edges of his words. You can do it. My parents placed the cat in my hands again and again, but every single time, my little fingers could not hold it, and it tumbled back down to the carpet. I did my own share of tumbling onto that rug. I guess that's why I remember it so well. It was green and ugly when you looked up at it close. I think the shag carpeting was outdated even before I was born. I had a lot of chances to figure out how the threads of a rug are woven, and as I lay there, waiting for someone to pick me up, I couldn't roll over, so I was just irritated. It was just an irritated me, the shag rug, and the smell of spilled sour soy milk in my face until I got rescued. My parents would prop me up on the floor with pillows on either side of me when I wasn't in the baby seat. But I'd see a sunbeam coming through the window, turn my head to watch little dust things that floated in, and bam! I'd be face first on the floor. I'd shriek. One of them would pick me up again, quiet me, and try and balance me better with the cushions. Still, I'd fall again in a few minutes. But then Tad would do something funny, like try to jump over a frog we were watching on Sesame Street, and it would make me giggle, and I'd fall over again. I didn't want to fall or even mean to. I couldn't help it. I had no balance at all. None. I didn't understand all the time, but my father did. He would sigh and pull me into his lap. He'd hug me close and hold up the little cat or whatever toy I seemed to be interested in so I could touch it. Even though he sometimes made up his own vocabulary, Dad never spoke baby talk to me like my mother did. He always spoke to me as if he were talking to a grown-up, using real words and assuming I would understand him. He was right. Your life is not going to be easy, little Melody, he'd say quietly. If I could switch places with you, I'd do it in a heartbeat. You know that, don't you? I just blinked, but I got what he meant. Sometimes his face would be wet with tears. He'd take me outside at night and whisper in my ear about the stars and the moon and the night wind. The stars up there are putting on a show just for you, kid, he'd say. Look at that amazing display of sparkle. And feel that wind? It's trying to tickle your toes. And during the day, he would sometimes take off all the blankets that my mother insisted I be wrapped in and let me feel the warmth of the sun on my face and legs. He'd placed a bird feeder on our porch, and we would sit there together as the birds darted in, picking up seeds one at a time. That red one is a cardinal, he'd tell me, and that one over there is a blue jay. They don't like each other much," and he'd chuckle. What Dad did most was to sing to me. He has a clear voice that seems made for songs like Yesterday and I Want to Hold Your Hand. Dad loves the Beatles. No, there's no figuring out parents and why they like stuff. So now, with these last couple of paragraphs that we've just read, I want you to think about a memory that you have with your parent, or something about your parents that makes them special. For example, my dad also really likes the Beatles, which is a connection I can make with melody. What's something that your parents have instilled in you, or a memory that you do, whether that be maybe going to watch fireworks every year on 4th of July, or maybe opening a specific present every single year in the same place and same time, something like that, a memory that you have with your family that you seem to maybe take for granted, but something that's very special for you. All right, and we're back. Let's keep going. I've always had very good hearing. I remember listening to the sound in my father's car as he drove up our street, pulled into the driveway, and wrestled in his pocket to find his house keys. He'd toss them on the bottom step, then I'd hear the sound of the refrigerator door open, twice. First time he'd get something cold to drink. Second time he'd search for a huge chunk of Munster cheese. Dad loves cheese. It doesn't agree with his digestive system very well, though. Dad also has the loudest, stinkiest farts in creation. I don't know how he managed to control them at work, or even if he does, but when he'd get home, he'd let them loose. They'd start as he walked up the stairs. Step, fart, step, fart, step, fart. I'd be laughing by the time he got to my room, and he'd lean over my bed and kiss me. His breath always smelled like peppermints. When he could, Dad read to me. Even though I know he had to be tired, he'd smile, pick out a book or two, and I'd get to go where the wild things are, or where the cat in the hat was making a mess. I probably knew the words by heart before he did. Good night, moon, make way for ducklings, dozens more. The words to every single book my father read to me, are forever tucked inside. Here's the thing. I'm ridiculously smart, and I'm pretty sure I have a photographic memory. It's like I have a camera in my head, and if I see or hear something, I click it and it stays. I saw a special on PBS once on children who are geniuses. These kids could remember complicated strands of numbers and recall words and pictures in correct sequences and quote long passages of poetry. So can I. I remember the toll-free number from every infomercial and the mailing address and websites too. If I ever need a new set of knives or the perfect exercise machine, I've got that information on file. I know the names of actors and actresses of all the shows, what time each program comes on, which channel, and which shows are repeats. I even remember the dialogue from each show and the commercials in between. Sometimes I wish I had a delete button in my head. I have a television remote control clicker attached to my wheelchair, very close to my right hand. On the left side, I have a remote for the radio. I have enough control on my fist and thumbs to push the buttons so I can change the station, and I'm really glad of that. 24 hours of big-time wrestling or the home shopping station can really drive a person nuts. I can adjust the volume and even play DVDs, if someone has popped one in the player for me. Lots of times, I watch Dad's old videos for me. But I also like the cable channels and the talk about stuff like kings and the kingdoms they conquered, or doctors and the diseases they cured. I've seen specials on volcanoes, shark attacks, dogs born with two heads, and the mummies of Egypt. I remember them all, word for word. Not that it does me a lot of good. Nobody knows it's there but me, not even my mother, although she has this mom sense that knows I understand stuff. But even that has limits. Nobody gets it. Nobody. Drives me crazy. So now let's just take a second to think about something that maybe drives you crazy, something that ticks you off, something that, not many people know about you, something that you hold in all the time. It can be something about you in school, about you outside of school, about one of your friends, something like that. So just think about that and pause, and then we'll continue. All right, let's keep going. So every once in a while, I really lose control. I mean, really. My arms and legs get all tight and lash out like tree limbs in a storm. Even my face draws up. I sometimes can't breathe real well when this happens, but I have to because I need to screech and scream and jerk. They're not seizures. Those are medical and they make you go to sleep. These things, I call them my tornado explosions, are pieces of me. All the stuff that doesn't work gets balled up and hyped up. I can't stop even though I want to, and even though sometimes I know I'm freaking people out. I lose myself. It can get kind of ugly. Once when I was about 4, Mom and I were in one of those superstores that sells everything from milk to sofas. I was still small enough to fit in the child seat in the front of the cart. Mom always came prepared and stuffed pillows on each side of me so I wouldn't tilt. Everything was fine. She tossed toilet paper and mouthwash and detergent into the cart, and I looked around enjoying the ride. Then in the toy section, I saw them. Brightly colored packages of plastic blocks. Just that morning, I'd seen a warning on television about that toy. They're being recalled because the blocks had been painted with lead paint. Several children had already been hospitalized with lead poisoning, but the report had said. But there they were, still on the shelf. I pointed to them. Mom said, "No, sweetie, you don't need those. You have enough toys." I pointed again and screeched. I kicked my feet. "No," Mom said more forcefully. "You are not going to have a tantrum on me." I didn't want the blocks. I wanted to tell her that they were dangerous. I wanted her to tell somebody to get rid of them before a child got sick. But all I could do was scream and point and kick. So I did. I got louder. Mom rushed to the toy section, pushing the cart real fast. "Stop it," she cried out at me. I couldn't. It made me so angry that I couldn't tell her. The tornado took over. My arms became fighting sticks. My legs became weapons. I kicked at her with my feet. I screamed. I kept pointing in the direction of those blocks. People stared. Some pointed. Others looked away. Mom got to the door of the store, yanked me out of the car, and left it with all the section sitting there. She was almost in tears when we got to the car. As she buckled me in my seat, she almost screamed at me. "What is wrong with you?" Well, she knew the answer to that one, but she knew that was not my usual behavior. I gulped, sniffed, and finally calmed down. I hoped the people in the store watched the news. When we got home, she called the doctor and told him about my crazy behavior. He sent a prescription for a sedative, but Mom didn't give it to me. The crisis was over by then. I don't think Mom ever figured out what I was trying to say that day. All right, so now that we just finished this chapter, I just want you to think about whether or not you've ever been in a time where you're super frustrated, where people don't understand what you're saying, whether that be an argument with a friend, with a parent, if you're trying to tell your dog to do something, like a situation where you can't explain what you need, but for some reason, no one else around you understands. So just take a second to pause and think about that. All right, and hopefully now you're back. So now we are actually done for our 30-minute session today, but the last question I have for you is I want you guys to think about the summary of what we've read today. So I want you to summarize it in a couple sentences, in a couple words. You can summarize it to a parent, to a sibling, to a friend, to a dog, to yourself out loud, to yourself in your head. I just want you to summarize what we've learned about Melody, what we've learned about Melody's parents, what goes on in Melody's head, the perspective of this book, just little things like that. I just want you to summarize it. So just pause and summarize. And hopefully you're back. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining our first Older Kids pre-recording session. I hope you enjoyed Out of My Mind. And I will see you next week. I hope you guys can tune into our YouTube channel and also to our live sessions, which we hold on Saturdays. Feel free to always email us, talk to us if you need anything, have any problems. We appreciate it. All right, thanks. Again, I'm Dia, and I had such a good time reading with you today. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.